Hi everyone, this is Nancy at Sipping and Painting Hampden, and today we are going to paint this lovely painting called Winter Holiday. This is a paint and sip, so I'm going to have my hot tea on this cold night. You can have whatever you want while you paint. I'm going to also paint with napkins. I have primary colored paint. In fact, I did forget to get my black, didn't I? Okay. Oh, that's right. I've got some black paint right here. No worries. So I've got my black paint as well. So primary colors are yellow, red, and blue, and I've got those. I also have some white and some black. So there's my yellow, red, blue, and white, and I have some black, and yeah, and every other combination of color, like a little pink in there or some green. I'm going to mix that from my colors, and I'll show you how to do that. I'm going to be using 3 different sizes of brushes today, a small, medium, and large. My large and medium are flat brushes. My small brushes are round. But as long as you have a variety of brushes, I'm sure it'll work. It doesn't have to be exactly like mine. I'm also going to use a fan brush today, but I will show you how to make pine trees with a fan brush or just with a flat brush. So you can choose depending on the materials you have at hand. And again, I have water in a jar, and I'm wearing an apron. That's really important. All right, so here we go. I'm gonna first cover my canvas with water. I do that because Denver is a dry place, and if I don't do it, my paints may run out, may not run out, but I mean, they may just feel really sticky and gloppy. And yeah, I might run out if I have a limited amount of paint. If I make my canvas a little bit wet first, then my paints will go farther, and they'll I can put them on more thinly, and they won't dry out as fast. So the paints are about the consistency of Greek yogurt right now, and that's a little too thick. So I'm going to need to thin mine down with a drop or 2 of water. I want them to be more like pancake syrup. When I put them on my canvas, for me, that seems to be a good consistency. And so putting water on the canvas is just a nice way to go in that direction. We don't want the paint to drip off, but we also want it to be a thick liquid rather than a thin solid. You'll see what I mean as we get going. So the first thing we're going to do in this painting is we're going to do the background. And you'll notice this painting has a really strange background. It has reflected light from all over the forest. I'm not even sure where the red and the yellow stripes are coming from. It's just really an unusual painting in that way. Also, the lines are vertical rather than horizontal, and that's really unusual too. I'm not used to painting this vertical backgrounds in the sky, but like I said, just remember that this painting is supposed to be reflected light coming from all over the place. And I bet before I pointed it out, I bet you didn't even notice how unusual the background is. So let's just go with that, okay? First thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna put in this blue area, and I'm gonna do that by picking up my white paint on a large brush. I'm going to dip the other side into blue. So blue on one side, white on the other, and I'm going to make blue and white streaks. And you can put your blue on first if you want. It's up to you. I am using a 16 by 20 canvas. Your canvas size may be different. That's fine. No worries. Anything smaller than a 16 by 20, I think it'd be hard for me to show you exactly what I'm doing. So I have some blue stripes in there. Now, if I want to, I can make more blue stripes, streaks. If I want more blue in it, it's really up to you. I guess blue is kind of a security belt, for me, because I tend to feel comfortable with blue skies. But you know what? Like I said, there's a lot of different colors in this painting, and it works. All right, so I put on some blue streaks, and I put more in this area because that's where those blue streaks are. But I'm not going to leave it alone at blue streaks. you'll see there are plenty of other colors as well. I'm also not going to just let it dry. These blue streaks are on very, very lightly, very lightly. So I'm going to just be okay with that being really light. I'm not going to put them on any darker. And I am going to be layering colors, so this will probably get more faded as I go. In fact, I can tone down those really heavy blue areas a bit right now. All right. I'm just going to put this down a little bit so my canvas doesn't bounce all over the place. Oh boy, it's been so weird to be cooped up right now, huh? All right, I'm also going to be using yellow, and I see there's some very concentrated yellow right here. So I'm going to start over here with my yellow, and I'm going to concentrate it more. And I'm not taking my time and being super careful, and you can see where the yellow overlaps with the blue, it makes green. And that's a happy accident. That's a deliberate thing. And so I'm also going to pick up some white on the tip of my brush, and I can go over that a little bit to tone it down where I want to tone down that yellow. But the yellow is kind of all over. Do you see that? There's some here, some behind the tree, and a lot of it over here at the bottom. So I'm just going to keep going in the white areas and letting that yellow interact with the green. Just, they have a little bit in common there, see? They're mingling. All right. Now this is much brighter and bolder than those colors. I'm probably going to put in a bunch of white next. So if you're noticing that it's much brighter and bolder, don't worry, be happy, okay? All right, I still have a bunch of paint on my brush, but I'm going to go ahead and pick up more white, and I'm just going to let all this blend in a little bit with more white. Just going over that yellow to tone it down. And some of it's going on the blue, that's okay. That works too. Notice that this is not an exact painting. It's very impressionistic. I doubt very much you've ever seen a sky exactly like this one. But like I said, it works. When you look at this sky, this painting rather, you tend to just see the trees and the water and the snow, and you don't even notice the background. So that is a good indicator that it's an impressionistic painting, that you're not noticing the exact details in it. You're just noticing your impression of it. So when Monet first started painting in his style, Impressionism was just taking off in Europe. And people criticized him and said, you know, your paintings don't look real. You know, it's just an underpainting. You have a lot of detail to put in. And he said, you know, you don't really understand my painting, obviously. He said, I'm not painting something to look exact, like the real thing. I'm painting the impression that you get of it, what you remember after you look away. Huh. So that shut him up, I bet. All right. So I'm also going to pick up a little bit of red, and notice that there's some red right in here. Again, you don't have to paint the way I am. You can paint your background any way you want. You don't even have to paint vertical stripes. You can paint horizontally if you want. You decide, okay? But the fact that there's some red in there tells me there probably is some setting sun somewhere. Or maybe this is the reflection off of some red maples somewhere. Red maples in the fall. Although this would have to be an early snow, if that were the case. Or maybe it's reflected light coming from a building. We don't really know. Maybe there's a building in there somewhere. There's a big red barn with red lights. We really don't know. We're just going to use our imaginations and come up with whatever we think it's going to be. It might be. I have a little bit of red left in my brush, and I'm just putting in some little streaks right over the green, and I'll tell you why. When red and green together make brown, and you'll see that there are some brown streaks. And if I just put the red over the green, I don't have to do anything else. It will automatically make brown. Or I can make brown. The way you make brown is you mix together red and green together. And really it's red plus blue plus yellow. It's easiest to remember if you think to yourself, red plus green. And maybe those are reflections or just hints of tree trunks, far away tree trunks. We don't really know. Again, it's all impressionistic. It's all not supposed to be exact or rational. Not rational at all. It's a little bit more light on that side. So I'm going to tone down this blue even further, a little bit further with some blue, with some light streaks made of white, a little white. And you'll notice I haven't even really cleaned my brush. I'm just using little bits of paint at a time and just letting them mingle, mix and mingle. Everything's mixing and mingling. It's like a big party. Go meet my friends, it's saying. All right, I'm going to call that done. It's a wild background, but you'll see it'll work. There's a little bit more white in here. Maybe I'll put a little bit more white. A little bit more white. And I'm barely touching the canvas. I just put a tiny amount of white on my brush, barely touching the canvas, just kind of flicking over softly. Oh, so softly. Oh, so softly. Barely touching it. Like putting water on a sunburned caterpillar. All right. Okay, so you'll notice that the horizon line is right here. See that? And then there's a mound there. I don't know if it's snow on a bush, it might be, but the horizon line is here. So that's about loose hand span up from the bottom. So I'm going to go a loose hand span up from the bottom here, right about here. And I'm just going to pick up blue on my brush and I'm going to make a line. Does it have to be perfectly straight? Oh, no, 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 because this is land, not water. And I'm just going to fill it in. Now, I'm going to have to paint land over this, water in some areas. There's land, there's land, there's land. But I can start with just filling it in with my water. Why not? You get to play God. When you paint, you get to be the creator. It's kind of fun. When else in life do you get to do that? I can't think of any other time. So you just have fun pretending to create the landscape any way you want it. It's your world, your world. I have to get at that bottom part again. However you can get at the bottom of your painting, do that. I'm also going to paint underneath, see that? I'm painting the bottom of my painting, and I'm going to paint the sides as well, the sides and the top as well. I always do that because that's called a gallery wrap. And when you paint your paintings around the frames like that, it's called a gallery wrap, and it will save you money because you don't have to put it in a frame. So I'm all for saving money. How about you? Plus it looks a little more modern as well, if you like that look. But you can always put it in a frame. Our teachers here, before we closed for the pandemic, we had 7 teachers working here. Oops, made a smudge. And one of them used to say, reference, you know, not having to put things in a frame. They'd say, you know, you can just put it on the wall. Just take down your wedding picture and your graduation diploma and your children's pictures and just replace all that with your painting. That always made me laugh. All right. So I've got this blue on, but notice I put it on kind of streaky and not solid and not perfect. That's exactly what I want. It's not solid, it's not perfect. And what I'm going to do with a flat brush, I'm going to take my flat brush and I'm going to, on the bottom of it, I didn't even clean my brush, didn't clean the blue off, but I'm just going to dab some white on both sides. And I'm doing it on the side of the palette here, which is a fancy name for a paper plate in my case. And it's flattening the brush as I do that by chiseling it in this way. Because I want a very flat line, and I'm going to make water lines, little water lines or big water lines, you decide. And you'll know it's water if those brush strokes, those blue brush strokes, are perfectly flat as you can get them. And then the water lines need to also be flat. Now, I know a lot of people say, but I don't understand. Bodies of water are wavy, right? Like that. Well, that's if you're looking at them very, very close. But if you're looking at them from even just a few feet away to very far away, like in an ocean, those water ripples look almost flat. And the reason they do is that water seeks its own level. And then you have just the top of the water glistening where it falls or goes over a rock or a log, where the sun hits the top of that little ripple. So even if it's a big wave in a big ocean, it will look flat from a distance. All right, so we have our funny sky, we have our flat water, and I know that I went very fast to get to this point, but I just want to tell you that it's perfectly fine to stop the video at any time and just take your time to catch up, okay? I did notice that I forgot to put a little bit of green back there. I'm going to mix a little bit of green, and the way you do that is take some of your blue and some of your yellow. And goodness, I put on so much paint and my blue is running all over the place. That's okay. I'm going to take a little bit of yellow and blue, mix it together, and that makes green. And then I'm just going to put in a little bit of blue, yellow and blue, which makes green right back here. Little green back here. There will be a tree, pine tree at some point we'll put in, but I just wanted to stick in a little bit of that blue shimmer. And then this looks like they deliberately made a log. Do you see that? A tree trunk. So remember I said that red plus green equals brown. So now I can mix a little red, a little green together, and I'm going to have some brown as a result. And then I can put that tree trunk in there. Now part of it's going to be hiding behind a bush or a tree, but that's okay. All right. There's one over there too. Very small one. All right. No one's ever going to see the original. They're just going to see ours. They're going to think we're geniuses. So don't worry, it doesn't have to be perfect. It doesn't have to look exactly like the original. We're using the original as an inspiration, right? Okay. So normally, if I were to paint this painting without snow on it, the one that I told you was called Picnic Spot, we would have brown and green here for grass. That's what we normally have. And you can even see it underneath where I originally put the snow. Do you see that? See the brown and green and a little gold to represent autumn grass? So we have a few ways we can tackle this painting. We could put that in there and then cover it all with snow. Absolutely. We could do an underpainting of those colors. Or we could just put the snow on. But I do like that some of these colors are showing underneath the white. So I'm going to go ahead and use that green and brown that I made before. They're right next to each other in my palette. And I'm going to use that to sculpt in this area, this landmass here. And it doesn't really matter what kind of brush you use. I just happened to pick up a fan brush, but it really doesn't matter. I can switch to a medium. All right, so there's some land. It's all going to get covered, remember, so I don't have to be perfect, but that's basically this landmass here. And then the land is under those trees. So once again, I'm going to use that green and brown, a little of this, a little of that. Doesn't have to be mixed perfectly. There's going to be snow over it anyway. And I'm going to just kind of paint in where I see land. So I'm going to put it right about here. And then I'm going to go across to about there. So that's this and this. So curve. And then it's going to come down to about here. And I'm just using my brush to draw lines. And then this comes in. And then there's some more land, but then there's this little pocket of river back here. I say river because I'm in Colorado. This is probably mountain sea. When you get up close in the mountains, that's probably what this is. So that's probably a river. Mountains have a lot of rivers in them. But maybe it's a lake. Maybe you're in Michigan. It looks like a lake scene to you. You decide. You're painting your world. All right, so I've got some land there. Then I've got some up here. Do you see that? Okay. So once again, I'm going to draw in where I think it might go. And it sticks out about as far as this one did. And I'm just keeping it even with the horizon. So we're going to call those our land masses. Yeah. Now, they're not perfect, and that one mixed with a little white. That's okay. No worries. It's going to get white on it anyway. But this is basically how our river goes. Between it here and over here, this is like a little island. Rivers are like that. They twist and turn and bend. All right, I'll let you catch up. I want to enjoy some tea. I told you that I'm going to show you a couple of different ways to make pine trees. So what I think I'll do is I'm going to jump right to the pine trees, and then we can come in and put snow on the land and add any other details we want in the water or anywhere else. I want to go ahead and show you some ways to make some pine trees. Oh, before I do that, I do want to show you If you haven't used a fan brush before, they're awesome. We don't include those with our kits. They're kind of an advanced thing, but I do want to show you, since I have one here, that fan brushes are really cool for drawing grass. You just start on the ground, put some paint on your brush, and then start on the ground and just flick up. See that? Isn't that cool? I love fan brushes. Fan brushes are just wonderful. But again, they're kind of a, you know, an advanced thing. We don't put them in our basic kit. And when I noticed in Bob Ross paintings, their basic kit, they also don't put in fan brushes, but fan brushes are cool. And see this area here that's going to later be covered with snow anyway? That might be grass, it might be a bush, we don't really know, but we can create some height there with our fan brush. Why not? Fan brushes are so great for, I love them for grass. They're great for pet fur. And I'm going to show you, they're really good for pine trees too. So why don't we just jump into that and I'll show you what I mean. All right, so I'm going to put some black paint on my fan brush. And I'm going to start the first layer of my trees. Okay, so I'm going to start with, let me start with the big one right here. I'm going to do this one. Nope, this one looks like it's behind it, so I'm going to do this one first. All right, and it's gonna go over that tree, that log, pretty much, but that's okay. And it goes all the way up. So here's my pine tree. I'm going to tap down to make the trunk, and notice I'm not being worried at all about the trunk being perfect. Not worried at all. And I have the paint on my fan brush at the tips. You see that? So this one's going to be a fan brush pine tree, so I can show you how to use a fan brush. All right, let me put that back down. So I am going to drop down from the top a little bit because I want the top to just have tiny baby branches at the very top that don't really stick out because they're so little. And then I'm going to use the corner of my fan brush to get those small branches at the top. And notice what my brush does. It's rotating to the front so that I can get wider branches. Do you see that? And then as I go down, I'm dropping down to another level as I go, and I'm applying more pressure with that brush. And I will need to reload my brush sometimes. And this is quite a bit of paint on there. It's not thin. It's quite a bit. There's no huge clumps, but it's quite a bit of paint. And I'm going to just keep dropping down to make those clumps. But notice how I'm using more pressure to make them wider and thicker. And I'm also going out to this triangular shape. You see that? Okay. And I'm going to go all the way down with my branches. And I'll tell you why. People are used to seeing a stump at the bottom of pine trees, but really you're only going to see a stump in a city park where they remove the branches to mow underneath, or on someone's lawn, or on a Christmas tree. But again, on a Christmas tree, they remove the bottom branches so they can cut it down. So when you're painting a tree that's out in the woods, paint it all the way down to the ground. The grass grows up to the bottom branch. And then see how I can see the trunk in here? I'm not comfortable with that because their branches are growing out from that side of the tree. Branches grow out from that side of the tree, but there's also some that grow backward and then some that grow forward. So the only way to paint those is to just tap a little bit more fullness over the trunk area. Hide that trunk a little bit with just a few more taps, especially on the bottom where the tree is wider. If you can still see the trunk through it, you need a few more taps in that area until you don't. All right, there's our tree number one. And again, I'm using black. We're going to use a few different layers for our trees. The first layer is black, and then we have to let that dry. So it's got a friend, right? Bob Ross always said, every tree needs a friend. So this tree's going to have a friend, and it's going to go right next to him. This one might be a little bigger. So maybe we'll have to imagine the trunk of this tree starting right about here. So if that's the case, I'm not going to put those teeny tiny branches at the top, because imagine the tree starts there. So I'll start with a little bit of branches right there. So it goes a little higher. All right. But again, notice that I'm putting quite a bit of pressure on as I drop down. The farther I drop down, the more pressure I put on. And do it on one side, and then I do it on the other side, and I start in the middle, do one side, start in the middle, do the other side, start in the middle, do one side, start in the middle, do the other side. But I'm always tapping in that middle too, and overlapping them a bit. I don't want it to look like a ladder. And remember, I tap all the way to the bottom. Now I want it to make sure that you can see a little bit of the background between each branch, because you want the birds to have a place to build their nests. You don't want angry birds in your painting. I'm going to load more paint, and I'm going to tap in any place that I see the trunk, tap in a little bit more fullness over that trunk. I don't want to see that trunk. It's like if you had an artificial Christmas tree, that seeing the trunk would look kind of bad. So you have to add a little fullness over that. All right, so I have my two trees. And then this one is way off on the side, but it lands here. And it's a smaller tree, so I'm going to do that one next. And it's a lot smaller. So I'm going to put that one over here. This guy grows on this piece of land. I'm going to drop down, remember, and then I'm going to get just the top with the corner. Notice how my brush rotates as I go. Watch it rotate. Watch it rotate. See it rotate? And notice that I'm going to go out farther and farther as I go down, and I'm going to use more paint, more pressure as I go down. You don't want a skimpy tree at the bottom. It's supposed to be nice and full down there. And you can flip your fan brush around to get more paint on it. And tap over that center area to get a little more fullness in the center. All right, so I've got my little tree, I've got my two medium or very large ones. Then I have this one on the side. Notice that one on the side, it's half on and half off. So that's interesting to paint. Let's do that. So I'm going to tap the trunk on. Then I'm going to start with just the corner. And then I'm going to start tapping, and it's going to get wider and wider and more pressure as I go. Now this fan brush is kind of funky. It definitely has a curve to it. Every fan brush is a little bit different. Some have curves and some don't. That's okay. Looks like a tree to me. All right, remember, tap over that trunk area for more fullness. We don't want a skimpy trunk showing, okay? And then you can also tap on the side, because that tree just goes right on over the side. Okay, so we've got all our trees on now. We've got these different kind of grasses, remember, that we put on. Those are fun. And we'll just put some snow over those guys. And we've got those down there too. Put some snow on. Yeah. All right, I'm going to clean my fan brush. Now, I don't want to put white over anything wet, but I can put green. So these trees are going to have 3 layers, okay? And I'll just show you the next layer that's going to be on them. So it's mixing together that yellow and that blue again. Oh goodness, I forgot to show you how to do a tree with a medium brush. All right, so you know what we're going to do? We're going to alter this painting a bit. Let me show you, because it's so important to me that you get to see all the techniques. If you don't have a fan brush, you need to do it with a medium brush, right? So I'm going to take a medium brush. I'm going to put it in black paint, but I'm doing the same thing. Remember how I chiseled my paint on the side of the plate. What? Hold on a second. Remember how I chiseled my paint on the side of the plate like that? I'm going to do the exact same thing with the fan brush. Pardon me, with the medium flat brush. The flat brush, that's what I'm trying to say, a flat brush. All right, see? And I got a finer point that way. So I'm going to put in a little baby tree here. This one's going to be different than that one. But here's some baby tree. Okay, same thing. I'm tapping down, same exact thing. And the same exact thing as you did with the fan brush. Start, make sure there's a point where there's no branches growing on that tippy top, right? And then you're just going to tap down just like I did with fan brush. It's exactly the same motion, exactly the same. I couldn't do this with a round brush though, because a round brush would give me rounder branches. And I need some kind of a flat profile to get this work done. Okay, so same thing, same thing. Just tapping down, starting in the center, overlapping them a bit, tapping down, tapping down, tapping down, and then getting bigger at the bottom. And then if you have any areas that are a little sparse near the trunk, just fill those in a bit. There we go. All right, see that? Okay, so you can do yours exactly like that one. It'll just take a little longer without a flat brush, but the results are the same. So let's let these dry a bit. I'm going to pick up my fan brush again, and I'm just going to mix up a whole bunch of green because the next layer on those trees will be green. But I do have to wait till I have some dryness in my trees first. But I'm going to show you the basic idea. There's my green. Remember, it's yellow and blue, and that doesn't have to be mixed in perfectly. Nope. Just yellow and blue. That's all you have to worry about. Yellow and blue. Together make green. Notice how there's dark in there, and then there's a little bit of green layer. And I can just add those little green highlights here and there, right over my black. I'm not putting as much paint on as I did when I did the black alone. These are just highlights to make it look more three-dimensional. So I'm just going to put on some green. Yes, it's mixing a little with my black. You should wait till yours is more dry. But I'm only putting on about 1/3 as much green as I did black. Why would I do that? Because these are the highlights of the branches. The black is what's deeper in the shadows. And then the green is what's sticking out more and is getting more light. So I'm going to tap on green, but not as much as I did on the black. And I'm not trying to cover the black. That's not the idea. I'm not trying to cover the black. I'm just trying to add a little green as highlights on that tree. As highlights, another layer of highlights to make the tree look more three-dimensional. Don't cover all your black. I love the Bob Ross saying. He used to say, you have to have light to see the dark. No, that's not how he said it. He said, you have to have dark to see the light. Wow, this pandemic is making me crazy, I swear. One of these days, we're going to be done with it. Hallelujah. Somebody on Facebook wrote, this too shall pass. It may feel like a kidney stone as it passes, but it will pass. All right. So green, but notice I'm not putting on as much paint as when I put on the black. These are just highlights. Now this painting resembles the one that we had. Remember I told you that we had one and we called it Picnic Spot? It really resembled this a lot. We put some more grasses in the lawn, but it looked a lot like this painting. So we're going to add snow after everything's dry. So let's give this about 10 minutes and let them dry. So when we do put snow on it, it will stick. But I am glad that we put some some land in there rather than just putting on snow, because I can see it in the underpainting that a little bit of that color comes through under the snow. And I like that look. I like that look. So far, so good. Now, I always say that you need to step back about 5 to 10 feet to really see your painting from the proper viewing distance, because you just can't see it when your face is in it all the time. And so I encourage you, get up and look at your painting from across the room. That's where other people are going to see it. And really, that's where we want it to look good. If you were to go to a museum and see works from the masters, the guards don't want you this close to a painting. They'd probably tell you to back off. And it's the same thing when you see your own paintings. You need to step back a bit. I saw a little canvas scratch in there, scratches, so I'm just covering it up with little white water lines. You never know they were there. Acrylic paint is a wonderful paint for beginning artists. And sometimes people paint with acrylic paint their whole careers. I find acrylic paint to be very forgiving because you can let it dry and then paint over it. Some people who only paint with oil paints, they'll say, oh, no, oil paint's the best. And it just depends on your perspective and your preference. I really like acrylic. It's a lot easier to clean up than oil painting. I don't have to use paint thinner. Paint thinner has benzene in it. That makes me nervous. When I paint with oils, I don't. I just manually clean my brushes, which takes a long time. But anyway, with acrylic paint, it's easy. You just put your brushes in the water and you swish to your heart's content. When I have little kids in the studio, I say swishy, swishy like a fishy. And just swish, swish, swish a ton. Let the water do all the work for cleaning your brushes. While we're waiting for this to dry, this would be a really good time to go get some fresh water, because we're going to need to put white paint over those trees. And I will show you how to put the snow on with a flat brush. So you don't have to worry. If you were someone that didn't have a fan brush and it's taking you longer to make your trees, no problem. I'm going to tell you how to put the snow on with a flat brush. All right, so I'm going to give this a few minutes. Go ahead and take a break. There are several different ways to know if your painting is dry. I'm going to look at my painting underneath a bright light. If it has shiny parts, it's still wet. See how it shines? It's still wet paint. When it dries, it will be matte looking. Also, a wet painting will feel cooler to the touch on the back than a dry painting. Third way is to rub it on the person next to you if they scream it was wet. I don't recommend that if you are with someone you have to live with during the rest of the pandemic, because they won't like it and they will make your life miserable. So you might not want to follow that one. All right, I'm just going to wait till it dries a little bit longer before I put on the snow. I put my green highlights on pretty thick, so they're taking a while to dry. One thing I can show you though is down here is dry, so I can show you how I put on the snow on those areas. If you have a fan brush, you can do it. I'm going to use white paint, of course, and my brushes are really clean. Make sure your brushes are super, super clean before you even think about putting snow on. Make sure those brushes are super clean before you pick up any water. And so I will just add a little snow in the same direction that I put on whatever it is I painted. So the grasses, their snow comes on just like the grasses went on. And then I just brush on with the fan brush, or I'll show you with a solid brush, the flat brush. You can do that too, but it's kind of nice when you actually let a little bit of that background, that underpainting come through, because wouldn't that really be how grass is covered if it's a light snow? I think so. So I'll switch my, I'm going to do a little bit more of the grasses back there because they're dry. And then you can see with that fan brush, I can come right in the land part and just do that. Notice how I'm brushing it down toward the river a little bit. That's because that's how the slope of the land would be. I want to go with the way the land would naturally slope. So it would naturally slope down toward the river, right down there. It's like brushing hair, right? Like a part over forehead. All right. Now I'm going to wait till this tree dries more and come in to do the highlights on the tree, but that's the land part. Okay, and I'll show you the land part with a clean medium brush as well. Clean flat brush is what I'm trying to say. See that? And again, I chisel it on the side just like I did when I made the trees, remember? But I'm going to do that with my flat brush, and I'm going to come down. Remember that I'm going to slope down on the sides toward the water. I'm going to slope down. Up here, it's got to be flat or higher, but near the water, it needs to slope down because the runoff would make all this slope down a bit. It's like combing Grandpa's hair, right? Look at how silly that looks. Okay. That's the general idea, is just have the edges slope down just the way it would. The land would. And if you leave a little bit of that underpainting showing, that's a good thing. That's a good thing. Probably wouldn't have made sense to put the snow on before I put trees in there, but I was so excited to show you trees. I just trimmed it off a bit with a line to create kind of a water line at the bottom. Because you know how the snow kind of freezes on the top of the water and it would create that crusty edge. And ice cold mountain water. All right. Boy, my painting's still wet. It's still wet. I'm gonna have to wave it around a bit. So there are three ways to dry a painting that I can think of. One is use a fan. Second one is to use a blow dryer. And a third one is just to wave it around. And if you live in a dry climate like we do in Denver, it won't take long for this painting to dry. Even if you put it on thickly like I did, it won't take long because the dry air will dry that paint pretty fast. It's already been 5 to 10 minutes and mine's still a little wet, but I'm just waving it around. It also gives you a little arm exercise. That's always a good thing, right? Just wave it around and it will get dry in a few more minutes. Or you can stick a blow dryer on it. That's pretty fast too. On a hot day, it would be even faster. We have a south-facing window at the studio, and in the summer, oh my goodness, is it hot out there. Holy cow, in front. And we just step outside for a few minutes and boom, those paintings get dry real fast. This is a good time, while I'm letting that dry a bit, this is also a good time to take a look at your streaks in the background. If any of those streaks are too streaky or too bold, look at them from far away and ask yourself, you know, is there anything I can do while I'm waiting for that to dry that won't hurt my painting? Do I need a few more water lines in my water? Maybe. But don't add paint just to add paint, of course, but step back about 10 to 15 feet and take a look and decide, after I get that snow on there, will I be done? Is there anything else? Did I miss anything? Do I need to fix anything? This is a good time to do that. Maybe this looks too bright for you. You decide. If anything needs to be tweaked. That log was a little bright. All right. I'm going to go ahead and chance it with some of these areas and hope I don't mess up the paint. All right, so I'm going to pick up my medium brush and I'm going to get globs of it this time, globs of white. And I'm just going to tap them on ever so softly. I'm just going to go in the dry areas in big old clumps. I'm not doing those small motions anymore. I'm doing great big clumps. Why would I be doing great big clumps of snow in the tree? Well, I'll tell you why. Animals climb in that tree, maybe birds land on the branches, and I'm not covering all the dark and all the light, the green. I'm just putting some clumps in it as one more thing. And I do need some at the end of some of those branches as well, because that would make sense. The snow would stick to the ends as well. But the snow doesn't have to cover the green, and it doesn't have to cover the black either. It's just in the areas that would be sticking out, and then some of those branches would probably have some snow knocked off. So it's not every branch, it's not every area. There's some really thick areas like that, and there are going to be some smaller areas. But it's going to be kind of random, and then some of those tips. Don't forget some of those tips. Because some of that snow's been knocked off. Every time a bird perches in there, a bird's going to knock off a little bit of snow. Or every time the wind blows, the wind will knock some snow off some of those branches. So we don't want to overdo the snow. We don't want to overdo it. Now, I think with this one, I used a fan brush. It definitely looks like more fan brush. This time I'm using a slightly different technique, but it doesn't really matter. They both look like snow on trees, and that's really the important thing. So you do what works for you with the materials you have. That's always the best lesson that I have when I'm painting. Do what works for you with the materials you have. It's amazing what people can do. Amazing. And not everybody has the same materials. Not everyone has the same experiences. But goodness, it's incredible what people will do. Make sure you put some snow all the way down at the bottom as well. Notice how much black is showing still, how much green is showing still. A lot. There's an awful lot of it. I don't have to cover everything. And if your paint is a little bit wet and you pick up some green, that's okay. Just let it dry, paint over it later. No big deal. No big deal. Notice I'm kind of turning my brush and trying to get some different angles here and there. Not forgetting the trunk area. Not forgetting the tips of the trees. And not every tree branch gets some. Like I said, sometimes those squirrels, they've been bouncing back and forth. Oh, they've been frolicking. having a good old time playing in the snow. And they knocked off some of that snow too. Maybe a hunter came through, knocked his head on a branch. I know some hunters, I'd like to knock them in the head. All right. Maybe a strong wind came through after that snowstorm. Just knocked some of that snow. I actually prefer this way with the flat brush to that way when it comes to snow, because this does look like that snow that really just sticks to the branches. To me. But you do you. The other thing is, you'll notice that pine trees, not all pine trees are the same. My pine trees didn't look exactly like these pine trees. And when you painted pine trees, they didn't look exactly like either one of these either. And that's okay. There's about 1,000 different species of pine trees, and every one looks a little different. The Florida pine trees are different than Nevada pine trees, and Nevada pine trees are different than California, and yeah, they're all different than Michigan trees. It just doesn't matter. Just make them so that they have a point at the top and they're triangular and there's space between the branches, and you'll have a pine tree somewhere. Don't forget the sides of your painting too. If you brought your trees over the sides, don't forget to put the snow over there too. I'm going to step back about 5 to 10 feet. I'm going to take a look and see what I think from a distance. One thing I did notice when I stepped back is that my painting does look much bolder and brighter than the original. I painted this one as well. I painted that one, gosh, I don't know, 4 years ago maybe. So every time you paint, your style is going to be a little bit different, definitely. And the materials are going to be a little bit different. I must be in a brighter mood. It's in the middle of the COVID pandemic, and goodness, I'm just tired of being at home, and I guess I'm feeling bold. So my painting was bolder. My colors are bolder today, but that's okay. Every time you paint, you're a different person. Every day you're a different person, right? Also, materials matter. I did all that snow with a flat brush, but it's different with a fan brush. I'll show you. Look at the different lines that you get with a fan brush. Way different, way different. A little more delicate, a little more delicate. If you have a fan brush, you can combine them if you want, or you can just do one of those. But see, the fan brush makes a different, delicate shape to it. Neither one is right or wrong. It's just different. Just different. But now that I did those, I'm going to have to stick a few in every tree so it doesn't look funny that one tree has it. I started painting when I was 50. I'm 58, and I started doing it because my kids were grown and I needed a hobby for myself that was just me, that had nothing to do with being a mom or a wife or whatever job I had at the time. And I fell in love with painting, and then I bought the studio. And I'm still learning a lot about painting. The artists that we had working here, they went to art school. They were professionals, and I learned a lot from watching them. And I'm still learning, and so I hope that you'll keep learning too. whether you know a little bit about painting or a lot, or you feel really confident or you don't, it doesn't matter. I hope you'll keep painting. It does lower stress, and it's a great activity for people to have with their friends or with family members. And in my case, it was a great hobby to have as someone who just wanted some time to myself and something of my own. So I hope you'll keep painting and learning and expressing yourself, because only you can paint you, your style. Only you can do that. No one else in the world can paint just like you. And to me, that's really beautiful. Pretty much out of white paint here. In a moment, I'm going to sign my name, and I hope you will as well. If you're watching this on YouTube, and I suppose you are, it'd be great if you'd send me photos of your painting. I can be reached at Hampden, Hampden, like the street in Denver, Hampden, SIP, letter N, paint, Hampden, SIP, N, paint, @gmail.com, and send me your photos. Send me your photos of what you painted. I'd love to see them. All right, I think we can call this painting done. I'm going to take my small brush, and on that one, I think I signed it with a Sharpie years ago, but I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to sign my name. I'm just going to sign my initials. Lately, I've been using red. I'm using a fine detail brush and just using a little bit of red paint, chiseling it up on the side. And then I'm just going to put my 2 initials right here. And I'll go put this painting on our sale table. We have about 100 paintings right now in here. And there's going to be more. By the time I reopen after the pandemic, there's going to be several hundred paintings for sale. We sell them for next to nothing. 2 for $25 these days. Crazy. So if you're interested in coming and buying some original art, we will have that for sale. We are open for retail. You have to wear a mask when you come in because it's the pandemic, but we are open from 3 to 6 Monday through Friday currently. But the best thing is to check our website every day for the calendar, and that'll tell you the most up-to-date retail hours. All right, we sell paint-at-home kits. The paint-at-home kits have everything you need in one kit, and they're good for all of our paintings. We use primary colors, so we're using those this whole season just to teach you how to mix colors, and everything you need is in that box for 20 bucks. You can come pick up a painted home kit. All right, well, thank you so much for painting with me today. And I do hope that you'll keep painting, and I hope you'll come back and paint with me again on YouTube. Thanks so much. Bye, everyone. Ciao. Happy painting. If you are still painting and you need this painting, go ahead and hit pause before I end the class. All right, go ahead and hit pause. Thanks, everyone. Happy New Year. Happy 2021. I hope it's better for all of us. Cheers.